All right, you're all good.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the St. Louis County Board of Zoning Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Janet Herman, Chairman, Angelia Bills, Vice Chairman, and Justin Randall, Member. The BZA Coordinator is Debbie Nesbitt. Planning staff is Abby Freudel and Gretchen Arnold, and Planning Manager is Mel Wilson. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, which is June 30th, I believe, 2022. The board hereby takes official notice of and admits into evidence on the record the St. Louis County Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 1003, St. Louis County Revised Ordinance 1974 as amended, and Chapter 1004, St. Louis County Revised Ordinance 1974 as amended. Next, I call for a motion to approve the minutes of the previous BZA meeting of June 15th, 2022.
I'll second them.
Okay. The hearing procedure is formal, but is a teleconference and is recorded. The planning staff will read each request into the record. The petitioner will be unmuted, state their name, and make a brief presentation to the board explaining the reason and hardship for the requested variance. Board will not consider financial hardships. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts. When the board is satisfied with the material presented, the chairperson will then ask if there is anyone in favor or opposition to the request. To indicate you would like to speak, please click the hand next to your name. If any comments were submitted, staff will read them into the record. Before a call for the vote, the petitioner may request a continuance in order to bring in additional documentation. The board may also request a continuance to gather additional information or for a visit to the site. Once comments have been heard, the chairperson will call for a vote. At that time, the discussion has ended and no further discussion is permitted. The board will generally make a decision today. 2 members of the board must vote in favor of the petition for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, you have 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use requested, or the variance will expire. The petitioner or any interested party has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court, but this must be done within 30 days of the decision. Paperwork indicating the board's decision will be mailed, mailed to the petitioners.
All right. 54-22, Mark Lawless is requesting an exception to the floodplain regulations and front, rear, and side yard regulations for the purpose of constructing a single-family residence at 820 Vance Road, maintaining a lot size of 18,600 square feet in lieu of 43,560 square feet outside of the floodplain, a front yard of 30 feet in lieu of 50 feet, a side yard of 8 feet in lieu of 20 feet, and a 15-foot setback in lieu of a 25-foot setback from the non-disturbed area in the stream buffer, as required by the FPNU Floodplain Non-Urban District Regulations of the St. Louis County Zoning Ordinance and the landscape regulations of the St. Louis County Zoning Ordinance. And Mike, I am going to unmute you so you can present.
Already, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, we have had previous variances on this piece of property. I did in the past get a permit on this, but due to the pandemic and some changes in the family, we decided to change the permit, change the house that was going to be built on this piece of ground. And apparently when we did that, that triggered the fact that not following through on the permit that was already issued triggered that the variance was no longer valid. So that's where we are today. We were told to get a new variance on the property. So we're basically back in front of the board asking for basically the same thing, but we are quite a bit further than when we last appeared. We have done considerable work with MSD and the floodplain people, and we know exactly what we're doing as far as getting this area that we're pulling out of the floodplain has in fact it is in fact really out of the floodplain. So we're having it declared as not in the floodplain. And so we're in the process of doing all that. We have our MSD approvals, and we are in fact in for the new uh, permits. So, we are following through on everything. Without the variances that we requested, the ground becomes unbuildable because it's not possible to pull 43,560 square feet, which is 1 acre, out of that area. Because as you can see, the floodway line runs kind of down the middle of the property, down that kind of broken line there. That's the floodway line. And as you can see, um, the creek runs through a good portion of the property. We do own on the other side of the creek as well, but of course that ground is pretty much useless. And we do have to maintain a 50-foot buffer zone from the creek bank. So that ground is going to be pretty much useless. It's pretty, but we won't be doing anything with it. So we're going to be concentrating on the 18,600 feet up where the house will be. And just for point of reference, the other houses in the area, uh, most of them sit on 5,000 square foot lots or on 6,000 square foot lots. So this lot will be approximately 3 times the size of those lots. So I don't think it will hurt the neighborhood at all. And in fact, I think it will help the neighborhood. And we request your favorable uh, vote on this, and we're in for the permits, and we're trying very hard to get this ground built upon.
Mr. Lawless, did you say that, so we approved this some time ago, but you said, asking me the same thing, but I thought at first you said you made some changes to it.
No, we just changed the house due to some changes within the family. My son owns the ground, and so he asked me to represent him here. I will be building the house for him, and they needed to change the house, so it went to a ranch home uh, instead of a story and a half. And that's the only change really that was made.
Okay, so the footprint of the house is the same as the
Well,
board.
it's not exactly the same, but I mean, it's not dramatically different. It was going to be about a 2,300 square foot, and now it's about a 1,980 square foot house. So it's relatively the same.
But are you asking for different setbacks than you had before?
I think before we had asked for a 20-foot setback, and we're just asking for a 30 now. I think everything else is the same. So actually, we're asking for a little bit less of a variance on the front. As I say, we're a little bit further along with our process than we were when we were in here the last time and the time before that. So,
Okay, and could we go back to the map, please?
Mhm.
Question.
Board, I do have a new updated site plan showing the house at 30 feet in the front yard and 8-foot side yards.
Well, I'm
So
just a little confused. Is what's in the red there?
that's where the house is going to
House
go.
is.
Okay, but it's not there. That's just a proposed.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's the
Okay.
proposed.
I'm confused. Okay. Angela or Justin, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time.
I don't either.
Okay. Debbie, do you think that's something we should need to see, or I don't think I care if I see it.
It's, he's actually needing less variance than he did before, and
Yeah,
you
okay.
all approved it, but,
Okay, that's what, I just wanted to get that in my mind correctly.
mhm.
Okay, all right, well, is there anyone on this WebEx that's in favor or opposition? Please hit the hand next to your name.
It looks like I'm not seeing anybody, so at this time I'm going to mute the petitioner so the board can take a vote.
Okay, 54-22, I'm gonna vote to approve the variance as advertised. That this was approved, previously, and, they're asking for even less variance now, so, going to vote to approve.
I second it.
I'm gonna concur.
Okay. So, Mr. Lawless, your paperwork will be sent to you. You can't hear us.
I think I just have him on mute, but
Oh, okay.
all right. 55-22, Chris Grisham is requesting an exception to the rear yard regulations for the purpose of constructing a retaining wall and fence at 403 Winding Oaks Court, maintaining a rear yard of 7 feet in lieu of 15 feet as required by the R2 Residence District regulations of the St. Louis County Zoning Ordinance and PEU Ordinance 14,716. So at this time, I'm going to unmute the petitioner who is being represented today by Colin Riley.
Hello,
Colin,
everybody.
you're
Thank you
good.
so much for taking the time to meet with me today. The reason we're requesting this variance is because we have been approved to build a pool within an easement. That pool needs a retaining wall. We have a 15-foot setback right now, but in order to make that retaining wall feasible, it would need to be a 7-foot setback rather than the 15. On our plot overlay plan, I'm not sure if I'm control, I guess, yep, there we go. Perfect. So the retaining wall is highlighted there in red. We would just need a 7-foot instead of a 15-foot variance.
Okay. And that looks like that backs up to the common ground, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And then as stated, the pool is within the easement. It has been approved, but in order to actually have the pool even installed in the first place, this is a structural retaining wall holding the pool.
Justin, Angelia, do you have any questions?
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
My only question is, I guess, how tall is that wall going to be?
I believe the top of the wall at the highest point would be an 8-foot wall.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone on this that wants to speak in favor or opposition? Please hit the hand next to your name.
Looks like I'm not seeing anybody, so at this time I'm going to mute the petitioner so the board can vote.
Okay.
Hearing none, 55-22, I vote to approve. The variance is advertised, the hardship just being the slope of the land.
I'll second.
I'll concur.
Okay, your paperwork will be sent to you.
All right. 56-22, White Flag Church is requesting an exception to the zoning enforcement officer's interpretation of a white flag representing the business logo of the church is not what a reasonable and objective observer would consider a religious symbol, and to the sign regulations for the purpose of constructing a new wall signage at 7531 Telegraph Road, maintaining a sign size of 100 square feet in lieu of 50 square feet, as required by the R1 and FPR1 Residence District Regulations and Section 1003.168 of the sign regulations of the St. Louis County Zoning Ordinance. The board will recall that the Planning Department did send a staff report for this request. And at this time, I'm going to unmute the petitioner. Steve, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
you're good.
Okay, so it's a two-part variance. I'm going to talk about the size of the sign, and then Bill Behrens is also on the call. He's going to talk about the religious symbol portion, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes. Yes.
So White Flag Church is building a large new worship center up at South Telegraph Road. The elevation in question where the sign is going to go is over 6,000 square feet. The rule for most businesses in St. Louis County is they would get a 5% allowance, which in this case would be a 300 square foot allowance for signs. The code only allows 50 square foot for churches, which in this case would only be 0.7%, really less than 1% of the building for a sign. Given that the building has a setback of 300 feet from the center of Telegraph Road, less than 1% or 50 square feet is wholly inadequate for identification. So we're asking for permission to build a 100 square foot sign, which would be 1.5% of the elevation. And even if you counted the religious symbol as part of the whole equation, that's still under 2.5% of the church, which we feel is perfectly reasonable given the 300-foot setback from Telegraph.
Alrighty, and then would you like for me to unmute Bill now, Steve?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Bill, you're also unmuted right now.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I appreciate you letting us present this. The real question that it comes down to is the planning department has rejected the white flag symbol as an acceptable religious symbol for the White Flag Church. So bottom line, the ordinance allows a church to have a 50 square foot religious symbol. The ordinance doesn't specify what symbols are acceptable. It doesn't specify anything that's not acceptable. It doesn't say what will or won't comply. It just simply says that they are allowed a religious symbol, that it's permitted. The staff person wrote that, I guess we call it their personal standard, that a reasonable and objective observer would recognize the religious symbol. Problem with that is that's not in the ordinance. That standard does not exist anywhere in an applicable St. Louis County document. And what I think you guys really need to consider, actually, I'm going to ask you to consider, number one, does an unelected government official have the authority to determine for an independent church what they're allowed as an acceptable religious symbol? And the second question is, in your opinion, should an individual church have the freedom to decide for themselves what they want to use as a symbol of their faith? Really comes down to that. We asked the church to send a letter explaining why this was their symbol, and I thought they wrote a wonderful letter explaining why it's not their logo, it is their religious symbol. I don't know if you guys have that in front of you, but I'd like to just read a little, if that's okay. It says, "It is only when we wave our white flag and surrender our lives to Christ that we can experience all that God has for us, especially eternal life. It's the symbol that most completely depicts our belief system as represented throughout Scripture. While many churches see the cross as their most important religious symbol, for us, it's the white flag. It is our individual white flags, when waved in surrender, that makes Christ's death on the cross relevant. Ultimately, it's the white flag for our congregation that most symbolizes what we believe to be the way to eternal life through Christ, which is why it's such an important religious symbol for us and not just a logo." So I think they make the case pretty clearly why it's their religious symbol. And I would appreciate your guys' confirmation of a fundamental right, really, for a religious organization to decide what religious symbol represents them best. Thank you.
Gretchen or Abby or someone, could you read that from the department for us, please?
You want me to read our report?
Yes, I don't think I saw that.
So,
I mean, or the gist of it. I mean, if it's really long.
so The zoning enforcement officer's interpretation was that the white flag was more of a business logo and to the to a general observer going past the building, they wouldn't recognize it as a religious symbol. The planning department really isn't taking a stance on this. We're gonna let you guys decide that one. We're neither for nor against it.
Okay, okay. I just kind of forgot what it was, that
Yeah,
more of a business logo it was felt to be. Okay.
yeah, that's what the zoning enforcement officer's interpretation was.
Okay. Justin or Angelia, do you have any questions?
Okay, outside of the decision of whether that's a religious symbol or not, is there a reason why the sign needs to be that large?
Am I still unmuted?
Yeah,
Yeah.
both Steve and Bill are unmuted.
Okay. I'll answer this. Generally, signs, are proportionate size with the building they're on. If you put a small sign on a very large building, it looks rinky dinky. And at the same token, if you put a big, huge sign on a small building, it's visually overwhelming. So the standard at St. Louis County is 5% of the wall area is allowed for signage. Because it's a church, they're only allowed 50 square feet for the sign, which, if they were right up on the road, small church, that would probably be adequate. But this is a huge church. They've got, well, I don't see the calculation I had it, thousands of square footage of frontage. Our sign is only like 2% of the wall enlarged. And really the other reason is it sits over 100 yards off of Telegraph. So with that deep of a setback and that large of a wall, 2% of the wall for their sign is really extremely modest compared to most of St. Louis County. I don't.
Okay. Well,
So,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, is there a monument sign out in front, or?
There is not a monument in front of the new building. There was one at their old location up the road.
Okay, so this would be the only sign. Okay. Go ahead, Justin, sorry.
So is it, and this might be for staff, but the way I understood your staff report, it's not that they, it's not just because that they're a church, it's because they're a church in a residential district that they're limited to 50 square feet. Is that correct?
All churches are zoned residential.
Yeah, so the church is part of the R1 and FPR1 residence district, and in the zoning code, they have a 50 square foot sign that they can have. So this is just asking for double that.
And the max that the board can grant per our authorization is to double the permitted sign
Yes.
variance.
So really, this is a two-part.
Yeah.
The first thing I think the board needs to consider is whether this is a religious sign or not, because that's going to determine what the rest of it would be. Because if you look at it as a religious sign, then white flag church words will be or would be up to 100 square feet. But if you considered the religious portion as not religious, then they're going to have to include that. That would be almost 50 square feet of the signage.
Yeah, understood. Mr. Goldcamp, do you have any legal thoughts on this?
So I don't want to share any legal advice in a open session. If you want to hold this and I can research the issue and give you some advice at a closed session next meeting, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I mean, this is a pretty substantial request for our board to be making. I think there's a lot to this.
Okay, would you become more comfortable if we continue it to?
I would be definitely a little more comfortable to have some legal standing on this presented to us prior to making a decision on the first part. The second part, you know, the 100 square foot sign, you know, it's set back extremely far back and from Telegraph, which that area of Telegraph, I think the speed limit's either 45 or 55. So I don't necessarily think I've got much of an issue with the bigger sign, but I do think I would feel more comfortable having a little more information regarding this religious determination.
Okay, Angelia, are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Okay, well, we're going to continue it for 2 weeks to get a little more information on this. And you will probably be the first one on the docket then.
Okay,
We'll continue for 2 weeks, just so we get all the information we need to make a correct judgment
that's
decision.
fair enough. One
Okay.
question, this is Bill Burns speaking. No, I'm assuming it would be appropriate, whatever information you find or research that you share with the board, we would have access to before the meeting so we can be prepared to address it.
I can share some information with you, yes.
Okay, because, well, all right, great.
So do we need to just for this particular case, do we need to make a motion and then vote on a continuance?
Yes.
Yes.
I would make that motion to continue case 56-22 to the next available agenda with recommendations to get some counsel from our legal department.
Yes, and I'm good with that too, also.
Yes, I concur.
Okay, so 56-22 is going to be on the docket in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, staff. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay.
Justin.
I guess that is the end of our meeting.
All right, thanks, guys. See you all in
Okay.
2 weeks.
All
See
right.
you,
Thank
see you
you.
in 2 weeks.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.